Dan gaan we nu door met mijn hoofdgast van vanavond, Shira Eviatar. Ze is een Israëlische danser en choreografe. Ze is gefascineerd door de kennis die ons lichaam in zich draagt. En dan niet alleen wat wij er zelf hebben ingestopt aan kennis, maar ook wat we hebben gekregen van de generatie voor ons aan cultuur en tradities. En volgens haar zijn de cultuur en tradities van onze voorouders aan ons doorgegeven en is er dus een verbondenheid. Wij belichamen letterlijk onze voorgaande generaties. Hier op Spring zijn er 2 voorstellingen van Shira te zien. De eerste is Evyatar Said, waarin de Palestijnse danser Evyatar Said zijn jeugdherinneringen aan dansen van vroeger verweeft met zijn huidige manier van bewegen. En in de tweede voorstelling, Rising, danst Shira ook zelf, samen met de Jemenitische Anat Amrani, 2 danseressen samen op het podium, voor wie de feestdansen uit hun eigen cultuur in hun lichamen gegrift staan. In de voorstelling worden die feestdansen van hun gebruikelijke context ontdaan en naast elkaar getoond en met elkaar vergeleken. Shira, thank you for being here. Very anecdotal. What was your first memory of dance? And you said your mother?
Yes, I think my memory was a second-hand memory. So my mother kept on telling me that the moment I could start dancing on my feet, I would. So really as an early baby. I'm not sure I did found a photo of me dancing in my kindergarten in a same position, exactly the same position I stop in Rising. There is exactly the same position in the piece.
Oh, that's cool.
So it was really nice to find this photo after 30 years or 20-something years. Yeah, I didn't know that it was exactly the same photo, but you know, the work is touching the history of the body and the roots of the body and how this movement is coming from cultural dances and how we take and rewear movements we know from a different context, from our cultural background, our ethnic body, and we bring it to the studio into a different, to the white stage. So it was really interesting to find a live proof in a way that it's exactly the same movement I'm doing. So
it proves your whole point of the show. That's so great. I read in an interview that you see dance as a bridge between past, present and future, and that it also outlines the genome pathway, the DNA of your family. How does that work?
I think my works observe the way we are. I take myself as a study case, as a person inside our society, and observe how my subjectivity is really combined different subjects, different people, agent in one specific work, for example, my family. So how I feel it's breaking down this idea that we're all so individual. We think for ourselves, but really the way our mind is structured and our movement is so much inherent from our past generations. We all becoming our mother in a way. So it's observing that, and also I feel to acknowledge the past and to give it space is a door to create future movement. But specifically, I feel in my work is about giving space to movements that really don't have usually the space they should have.
Yeah.
They are excluded from spaces. And for me to create it and to bring it to the studio is creating like synopsis of for future movement. It is the future in a way.
Right.
So
let's discuss that later, because that's Uprising, for example, that one of the shows that you do here. But this idea of embodying your grandparents, for example, or the DNA line of your forefathers. How would you access such information or such knowledge? Is it somewhere in your body, and can you trigger it?
Yes, for sure. Well, I feel, first of all, is to acknowledge the movements that I learned in my cultural space. So in culture, for sure, we learned from one another, we copy each other. So it's really movements that I could trace back, for example, in my grandmother, and she traced it back. And of course, it's a collective dance, it's a collective movement. And when I'm touching this, I feel like my cultural technique. Yes, so my body already have this, it's not only one person in the world, so through rewearing these movements, I can trace back, my knowledge of my culture in a way, so.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the example. The Mizrahi dance, is that pronounced correctly?
Yes, Mizrahi dance. I want to say it's about muscles memory. It's a lot about this when I bring it to the stage.
Yeah.
It's like a small technique that it's about really when you tap into the right muscles memory, the movements that you used to do, that you usually do, there is a lot of information that your mind and body brings you back. So you kind of go back to a different time and space, and
even before you were born.
This I don't know, but actually in the practice, a lot of weird things and coincidences happened. So maybe yes, in a way, you can really tap into sometimes knowledge that is rooted so deeply in these movements that I feel, yes, you can touch it. It's already happened to me actually in one process.
That you feel connected to.
Maybe I should say about this. In one work, I have half an hour, I'm doing this. I'm really breaking down this movement. And at some point, I'm doing it on the floor, and I'm doing also with my hair, and there's a lot of like hair movement, and I'm doing like around with my hair. And then my friends, one person came and he said to me, this doesn't look anymore like belly dancing. And I said, well, okay, it's not belly dancing exactly. And he said, no, it looks too far, okay. And then later on, I start to look up like YouTube Moroccan dance from Morocco, really, because what I'm touching is really Moroccan dance in Israel. So it's the way it transferred already in Israel.
Right.
And then I look, and they're doing exactly the same. And actually, I didn't know. And this was really, in a way, almost scary. I was doing as if I did a bad copy of it, as if I imitated really badly, or not really badly, but actually really imitating it the same.
And it hadn't been taught to you in this way.
So this specific, for example, movement wasn't exactly thing that I seen in Israel, but it's things that it's from Morocco.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like I really tap into it from the practice in the studio. So this was a moment of like, okay, it does trace back in a way.
Exactly.
If you enter deeply. So, yeah.
Let's talk about one of your shows, and I think we need a little bit more background information to really fully understand them, or try to at least. That's why I mentioned the Mizrahi dance. I feel like maybe you could help me define it correctly. What does Mizrahi mean?
So Mizrahi is a term, Mizrahi is Eastern, when you say in Hebrew. Eastern, and Mizrahi is the name that Jewish people from Arab countries got when they arrived to Israel. It's a political statement, or how to say, like a definition. It's a political definition when they say there is Ashkenazi Jews that come from Europe, and there is Mizrahi Jews that come from Arab countries. So it's identity, and it's of course also tracing and saying things about budget and where you're placed in society usually, or the stereotypes you have.
What is this place in society? Because we don't really understand the context.
So when the establishment, I will do it but it's really simplifying it, of course, because it's so complicated. Really, Israel is a collapsing into itself universe. So I would say shortly that when the establishment of the government of Israel, so 70 years ago, people immigrated from Arab countries and from Europe countries, European places. And then what happened is, and of course people also were already there, not a lot, but some. And so in the Zionist project, in making there was like a Zionist hope to create a new body of the Zion people, and it looked quite like more towards the Ashkenazi, let's say. So this one was one building of an idea and of a stereotype of what is the right and smart and new, and the approval, like this is the approved people. And what happened, of course, to support this, also in terms of budget and where they were placed, Mizrahi people, when they came to Israel, they were placed in certain places that you don't get enough opportunities. Usually they wouldn't go to university. There is a thing, they teach you already how to become like a mechanic. Like you would not get a diploma to really get to university to study.
You don't have the same chances.
You don't have the same chances at all. You are closing your space. You have a certain stereotype that is very rooted and inherent inside actually the real physical traditions of Mizrahi people. This is for me really painful because, for example, if my grandmother would wear her traditional clothes, this was her clothes. Like this is the way she was, this is what she was wearing. And her language was Arabic, this is what she would speak. But then with this Zionist idea, they really rooted inside like bad images or stereotypes of, these people are stupid or not smart enough, and then so it really brings the eye and the gaze of European, the European people really put the gaze on them and saying, yeah, when you wear this, you immediately, you are touching the stereotypes. So of course what happened that the next generation really did everything not to look this way. So they did everything not to speak Arabic and to be away from their parents. My father changed his name. So my name was supposed to be Shira Eviatar. It's a Moroccan name. And when he went to become a doctor, and everybody really didn't believe him. And many doors were, closed. You're Eviatar? You're not. Right? Yeah, because they knew he's Moroccan. And when he changed his name, immediately, it was much easier for him. I must say also there is a very huge thing that happened in Israel that they're now more and more talking about it and revealing it, that in the starting of the nation, Yemen women would give birth and then their kids would be kidnapped, which is really crazy, and not a lot of people know about this. And also in Israel there's a big they're trying, of course, not to confirm this, but it's really, you always hear about it, and there's many testimonies now, and they're trying to establish this, that the government will take responsibility for this. So the kids were taken away and given to family that couldn't give birth, not Mizrahi family.
Right. So there's this huge division, so to say, between those two groups, I would say.
Yes.
Now, the starting point of Rising, your show, is a specific dance. What kind of dance is it? Could you show us a little? Could you show what it is?
Okay. So I bring my Moroccan traditional dance. So it's more about the shoulder blades, and it's a lot of shaking, and it's more about the hips. And there's a lot of you flatter yourself. It's like a kind of a value that you are acknowledging yourself while you acknowledge the other. And the Yemen dance is actually much more, it's not so sexual, like first of all in the means of what body parts they're moving. It's much more the movements of steps and more touch. Actually, they're holding hands. There's a lot also of movement of the neck. So there is not this, for example. They're not moving this part. And it's much more collective, and it's more canon. There is a canon to the Yemen dance. Unlike the Moroccan, it's in the parties is more loose.
Right. And what happens on stage in your show is that you dance with Anat Amrani, who is from Yemen.
Who also has Yemen roots.
Yemen roots. She's not necessarily.
Her parents are from Yemen.
Yeah. Okay. So, would you say that there's a certain similarity in those dances because of the background?
We found similarities and we found differences. And for example, for the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes, we really observed this, and we let the audience observe it.
The differences are
the differences and the similarities. So what is different and what is similar, and you really see it in the movement and the way we sketch it in the space.
Can you give an example? What is similar?
So we found, for example, in a funny way, that there is a shaking of the hair that we found very similar to the shaking of the pelvis. So it's this moment, for example, it's similar. Or when we start, we really show how it's really starting from a different place. The Yemen dance we found is much more in a bounce of the, is really all about this actually, bounce of your knees.
Okay.
And for me, it's really from moving, so switching the weight from my pelvis. So it's really basic in a way. And actually, we're doing it in a way that you really see the body. So it's not with the traditional clothes or with the ethnic aesthetic.
Yeah.
You can really see what it does to the body and what it means to move in this way.
Right.
And so it's our present body. It's not like we are somewhere else. It's here and now, bringing our knowledge that we have embodied in our movements and in our body, and we bring it here and now. So
yeah,
with our flesh.
With your flesh, absolutely, because there's a lot of skin that you show, and it's interesting, but it feels sort of like a celebration. It's a celebrational dance.
Yes.
To start with, but it also feels like a celebration of the body because, well, you're dressed in sort of women's underwear, showing a lot of skin. It could, in the first second, maybe trigger sort of erotic notion that you think, oh wow, but then it feels more dignified and more liberated the way you dance. Is that what you wanted to do?
Yeah, really, very much actually. Yeah, we celebrate ourselves, we celebrate our body the way it is. We are not apologetic in any way. We own this, and I feel it's questioning also, our biological body, and so it's a moment between you can really read. There is the meaning of this movement. There is the social code that inside of it, and then there is also
what
the
does that
object.
mean? Social code inside of it?
So, for example, in Israel, when they see it, they for sure they know this. They know the movements. They are it's Yemen dance. It's automatically they have their. It's a very limited and they know it. They know it from their home, or they know the stereotype of it. So it's coded in this way, and also it's coded inside our body, right? Because what I said about this, the muscles memory.
Right.
So it's coded already from the culture. And of course, in the same time, there is just the object of the movement. It's just a movement that we're doing now. It's a hand movement. But it has, of course, so much layers of meaning in the same time, but also it's just energetic, kinesthetic material.
Right.
So it has this, so also this body that we have, the only color, the only differences in the stage is our body. We wear the same thing. It's a white stage. So how we wear ourself, our skin, what we got, this day, I came with this suit of body. So we are wearing this, so it's, it's a celebration of, we are just like that. What can you do? Yeah.
It's also very funny that it feels light and well, celebrative, which is not very typical for contemporary dance, to be honest.
Yeah. It was really important for me that, we are bringing it to the white stage and to the studio. It was really important not to make it, not to drain it and to make it without the real flesh and meat that it has, that is joy and happiness and transformation of information and flying together. And what I said about, complementing one another, this is the essence. And it was really important for me not to again destroy it and to exclude it. And I found that in the contemporary dance or world, what I found is that these kind of feelings, light, joy, happiness, are usually not enough, have space and being looked up to, being, as if it's not good enough.
Right, superficial maybe.
Yeah, superficial. But actually this, again, this culture is really, is celebrating, is part of their value, is really a strong value to be in this way. It's part of a way of being. You can learn a lot, it's part of their wisdom. So it was really important to say, you know what? Of course, when you are making a hierarchy of what is superficial and what is deep, again, you are reinforcing a certain hierarchy for sure through this aesthetic and saying, oh, this is not good enough. So I'm saying, no, this is good enough, and this is plenty of layers and plenty of way to observe this, and this is thing that should have space. So when you see it, I think you will see how many different ways you can be in this condition.
Yeah.
That is not just one thing.
No, you why do you laugh?
No, I feel I can talk forever.
Yeah, no, that's good. You say very sensible things, so that's fine. I also read that you wanted to bring this to the stage, partly because what you mentioned just now, but often because it's set aside as folklore, something that you can't really take
Right.
serious. Can you explain why people would look at this specific dance and say it's not, we don't have to take this serious, or this is a...
It's a good question. It's the politics of our world, I feel. It's rooted there, but I can share when I went to study training, like to become a professional dancer. You know how they tell you to fix the 4 points. So they were really into that with me and with everyone, and they keep on saying, you have such a freedom here and you have freedom here. Can you fix the 4 points? And I'm like, okay, it should be here. And then I realized that this is a political request, because when you ask me to fix these 4 points, you fix a certain aesthetics that says what is the good dance and what is the dance that should be on stage and what shouldn't, right? Because really in the beginning I was almost ashamed to bring this to the studio, because people were really, telling me, what are you doing? What is this? It's everything. It's against the form that I learned in a way. So in Israel for example, there is really like a folklore night, but really every night is a folklore. Half of the folklore is not said it's a folklore, right? Ballet also, maybe it's a folklore of Russian tradition, or so it's not seen as this way, as ethnic, but everybody has ethnicity.
Yeah.
But we don't talk about it this way. So
it's outside of the norm, and now you say, okay, let's get rid of that norm and let's bring it to the stage and let's see it.
Let's bring it, body, time, budget, gaze. You should look at it. You should get to know it, get familiar with it. Yeah, to re-centralize it, to celebrate it, to say it's rich and you should acknowledge it. Or
Are you going to play the same piece in Israel also?
These pieces, it's performed many times in Israel.
How do people react to it? Because I can imagine that the political implication is much bigger there than it is here. It's interesting. There, for sure, half of the audience read it differently than the other half. So half of the audience really know this, and for them is like, it's the first time they see this really on stage, and they keep on telling me, wow, I saw my grandmother, I saw my mother, I cry. Like, for them is really to see things that are so used to seeing in a different light. And some people say, it's the first time I could identify with what I see. It's the first time I feel I can be in the theater and not, and I understand what I'm seeing, and it's my space as well. For example, actually, also Palestinian would come and watch the show, which usually rarely happen, that they come to see a contemporary dance. They don't feel it's their space at all. So it's nice that also the audience is different and people come and feel welcome. It's opening up for more people.
For me it's really important to host everyone. Everyone is welcome. And then half of the audience, they see the stereotype. They see the way they observe these dances. They see it really touches them in the place that they feel almost, I did felt he's doing he's doing an imitation of, and then they understand it's not an imitation, and then they understand the way they watch it, and they kind of like,
they feel trapped.
Like they feel bad for themselves, So it's like a cubistic work. Each person sees from a different angle. But I found like the physical reaction or the in the present moment reaction, in a weird way, people react the same.
Which is what kind of reactions
when we are touring in Israel and here until now, when we are touring, so people react the same. They laugh, they cry, they are with us, or they are, in some moments, they're like, oh, nothing is happening, and then they get engaged somehow, or so it's weird in this way. It's interesting.
Yeah. Do you feel that you've taken a new step in these dances when of course all this was passed on to you from tradition? Now you take it into a new context and an entirely new meaning, I would say. Do you feel like you're taking a new step and you're making it future-proof, maybe? Or?
Yes, for me, I really feel it, because also I see in Israel, for example, that people are feeling much more like now they're starting to talk about it, and it had a really huge actually impact, I feel, in the dance scene, and people feel much. Yeah, now it's like there is a route, you can just go there. So it's in this sense it's beautiful also to ask about what are we studying, how do we teach what is being to be trained in Israel, what does it mean, what should we give our students, or it really open up, I feel, new thoughts and new paths. So
And when it comes to the specific body, the way that you show the body, do you think that also reaches a new vision of the female body?
Of the female body.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel this way. Again, I see it through the reaction. A lot of people say like, like every woman should see it. It's a lot of many people said this to me already, that it's like because we're really not ashamed. There is really no shame, but we're also not, too much, I feel, imposing or something like this. But it's, but also I feel with Evyatar, by the way, because he's a non-dancer. He's not in the habitus of the Western dance. He didn't train.
That's the other show.
It's the other show, Evyatar Said, yeah. And but I say he's a dancer that's being trained in the cultural spaces. He's a well-trained dancer. He has a lot of knowledge. He's an amazing dancer, and to see him on stage really is already and now after 2 years we're working together, it's interesting because some people now are like, oh, I thought about Evyatar for my next piece, which is really great that people now consider him that he really opened the door for himself to this world that I think he really wants, and he's a really beautiful dancer. So but the first moment sometimes when he enters the space on stage, people are like, oh, what, like this guy, oh, you should go, it's a dance.
It's about to start.
It's a dance, it's about to start,
Really?
Really. Some people, even in Israel, they say, the technician there, like they're asking him to help around or something, can you, and
because
he's
there's
like,
something in his movements
he's the dancer.
that doesn't look like a dancer? Or why?
Even his look, I mean, he really comes from a different.
What does he look like? Because we don't.
Well, for example, he looks from a Yemen culture. In Israel, people would really recognize him from Yemen. It's really terrible to say, but he has, for example, a darker skin. And this is already, in these spaces usually, people already think, oh, he's the worker. He's like the technician.
Right.
They're not taking him as the dancer. He's not the performer. Why is he taking so long to prepare his body? And that's, that's terrible.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is.
And does it have anything to do with his movements also, or is it just purely?
Yeah, I think also the way, of course, because he's not. He doesn't take anything for, like, there is no how you say, like, he comes to the studio and he's doing whatever he thinks should happen in the studio, which is great and much more interesting. He doesn't have the walk of, actually I must say sometimes it's really funny, but sometimes Evyatar is actually doing like he would stand in the first position, for example. This was really funny for me because in the synagogue, like, they will pray in first position.
Okay.
So this was like a interesting moment of the ballet technique and like the Yemen traditional cultural way of being, and like, oh, it's the same. But also the way he walk, and he's being himself. I don't know. He's not.
He's not
like
labeled dancer. Yeah.
Really, when I was taught as being a dancer, I got even hit like by my teacher if I did something that was not like in the right thing, really, which is crazy. So he doesn't have this. He's not afraid, to be right or wrong.
It's so interesting because if you look at contemporary art and visual arts, that I feel that has been liberated since like 40, 50 years, since conceptual art, basically. And maybe in dance, there's a sort of strict regime of this is a dancer and you should behave this way and you should make those movements and then you're approved as a dancer. Do you feel like you're trying to open that up and say, okay, come to the stage and do
and
it
also
your own way?
to look at the body of knowledge that is considered like dance, because he's really well trained, like he's a phenomenon dancer, just in a different technique.
Right.
So also about this, to observe that. And then, his body movement is different. And it's beautiful and just different values.
Yeah. Thank you for opening that up with your shows. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.